So, have you ever had that experience where, you know, you're speaking English, and you just feel like your mouth is just like moving in slow motion?
Yes.
You've got this thought in your head, but it's like it just won't come out. And there are all these ums and these awkward silences, and it's like
I know, exactly.
so frustrating.
Yes, absolutely. And so many English learners experience this. It's incredibly common. And today we're going to do a deep dive into this topic.
We are.
Speaking more fluently and how to reduce those pauses and how to sound more confident when you speak English.
Yeah, because confidence is a huge part of it, I think.
Definitely.
And so much of it comes from, just being able to speak naturally without having to think too much.
Absolutely.
So we found this really cool YouTube video
Yes.
by Easy English Talk
Yeah.
called How to Speak Without Pausing. And it was just packed full of really insightful advice.
It was such a practical video.
Really, really practical, yeah.
And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to take all of that.
We're going to extract the gold and just give you the nuggets of wisdom
Exactly.
that you can then go and use.
Yes. Think of this as your fast track or shortcut to smoother, more confident English.
Totally.
So we're going to break it down into specific areas to make this as actionable as possible.
Awesome.
So first we're going to look at why do we pause in the first place? What are the reasons behind those hesitations? And then we'll move on to concrete techniques to reduce those pauses.
Okay.
We'll talk about how to actually train your brain for faster verbal responses.
Love that.
And of course, we can't forget about the importance of mindset.
Yeah, mindset's huge.
So we'll cover some key mindset shifts that can make a world of difference.
I think that's a good point to start at, actually, because, I was thinking when I was watching that video
Yeah.
that, we can learn all the techniques and all the kind of practical advice.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not in the right headspace, it's almost like you're kind of fighting an uphill battle, right?
Absolutely. Your mindset really is the foundation.
Yeah.
So much of speaking fluently stems from feeling confident and comfortable in your own skin.
And not afraid to make mistakes.
Exactly. Because mistakes are inevitable. They're part of the process.
Yeah.
But it's how we view those mistakes that makes all the difference.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go back then to the beginning
Sure.
and talk about, why do we actually pause when we speak?
Okay, well, the video highlights a few key reasons that I think a lot of us can relate to.
Yeah.
One of the first ones is simply that many learners are pausing because they're trying to find the perfect word.
Yeah. They're like searching for it.
Exactly. They want to use the most accurate, sophisticated vocabulary.
Oh, I was so guilty of that one.
I think we all are.
Like, I'll be in the middle of a sentence and then I'll think, oh, there's a better word for this.
Yes.
And then I'll just kind of freeze up.
But what's interesting is that often a simpler word would have worked perfectly fine.
Right.
And it would have kept the conversation flowing.
Yeah, it's more about getting the meaning across, isn't it?
Exactly. It's about communication,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
perfection.
So it's okay to just go with the first word that comes to mind, even if it's not the most impressive one.
Absolutely. As long as your message is clear, that's what matters.
And also, sometimes I find that, the longer you kind of dwell on trying to find that perfect word,
Yeah.
you kind of lose your train of thought as well.
You totally do. You lose that momentum.
Yes.
And then it becomes even harder to get back on track.
Okay, what's another reason that we pause?
Well, another big one, and this is something that I've struggled with myself, is a simple lack of confidence.
Oh, yeah.
It's that fear of making a mistake.
Yeah.
It's like there's this little voice in your head that says, wait, are you sure that's right? Or what if you pronounce it wrong?
Oh, my gosh. It's like a little gremlin.
It is. It's a confidence gremlin, and it can really sabotage your fluency.
Totally. And I think, it's so easy to get caught up in that fear, especially when you're speaking with native English speakers.
Yes, especially then.
You feel like they're judging every word you say.
And the thing is that most native speakers are actually really encouraging and understanding.
Yeah, they're not as critical as we think they are.
Right. They're more interested in what you have to say than in your grammar.
Okay, so confidence or lack thereof.
Yes. Lack of confidence is definitely a major cause of pausing.
So what else?
Another common culprit is simply vocabulary gaps.
Yeah.
If you don't know the word for something, you're obviously going to pause while you try to think of it or find a way to explain it.
It's like hitting a brick wall.
It is. And the more limited your vocabulary, the more often you're going to encounter those brick walls.
And it's so frustrating when you know the word in your native language.
Yes.
But you just can't think of the English equivalent.
It's like it's on the tip of your tongue,
Oh, that's the worst.
but you just can't quite grasp it.
So what can you do in those situations?
Well, that's where those techniques for explaining things in different ways come in.
Okay, we'll come back to those.
Yes, we'll get into more detail on that later.
What's another reason?
Okay, this one is huge, and I think it affects so many learners.
Mm-hmm.
It's the habit of overthinking and translating. It's this natural tendency to construct the sentence in your native language first
Yeah.
and then try to convert it into English.
Oh, yeah, I do that all the time.
And it's understandable because that's how we've been taught to think about language.
Right.
But the problem is that different languages have different structures, different grammars, different ways of expressing things.
Okay.
So when you try to force a direct word-for-word translation, it just doesn't work.
You end up with these weird sentences,
Exactly, that sound unnatural and often don't even make sense.
and it takes so much longer.
It slows you down because you're essentially doing double the work.
Okay, so we need to break free from that habit of translating.
Yes, the goal is to start thinking directly in English.
Right. But how do we do that?
That's a great question, and we'll cover some specific techniques for that later on. Okay, so one last reason for pausing that I want to mention
Yeah.
is nervousness and pressure,
Okay.
especially when you're speaking with native English speakers.
Oh, yeah, I think we've all been there.
We have, and it's that feeling of being scrutinized, of being judged, that can make your mind go blank.
I hate that feeling.
It's horrible. It's like all the English, just disappears.
And you just start stammering and stuttering.
And it's often worse when you're trying to impress someone or when the stakes are high.
Oh, yeah, like a job interview or a presentation.
Exactly. In those situations, that nervousness can really take over.
So basically, we're saying that the main reasons we pause are lack of confidence, vocabulary gaps, overthinking and translating, and nervousness.
Those are the big four.
Okay, so now that we know why we pause, let's talk about what we can actually do to fix it.
Right. Let's get into some practical solutions.
Okay, let's do it.
So the first technique the video emphasizes is thinking in English.
Okay, we talked about that a little bit earlier.
Yes, and this is really the foundation of fluency. It's about shifting your internal monologue from your native language to English.
So instead of forming a thought in your native language and then translating it,
Exactly.
we want to be thinking directly in English.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
And it takes practice, but it's absolutely achievable.
Okay. Any tips for how to actually do that?
Yes. The video recommends a really simple but effective exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Just describe your surroundings in English.
Okay.
So, for example, if you're sitting in your living room, you might think to yourself, okay, I see a sofa, I see a lamp, there's a window, the curtains are blue.
Okay. So just simple, basic observations.
Exactly. Nothing complicated, just getting your brain used to forming thoughts in English.
I love that. And you know what? I think that's something you could do anywhere.
Absolutely. On the bus while you're walking to work, even in the shower.
Just make it a habit to narrate your life in English.
Precisely, the more you do it, the easier it becomes.
Okay, that's a great one.
Okay, so another technique that I found really interesting
Yeah.
is the use of filler words.
Filler words.
Yes, so you know those little words and phrases that we often try to avoid, like, the video actually encourages us to use them strategically.
Really?
Yes, because they serve a purpose.
Okay.
They act as verbal placeholders. They give you a moment to gather your thoughts without creating an awkward silence.
So it's better to say, I think, than to just have dead air.
Exactly. It keeps the conversation flowing.
Then it sounds more natural.
Much more natural. Native speakers use filler words all the time.
They do.
It's part of the rhythm of spoken English.
Okay, so instead of being afraid of filler words,
Yeah.
we should embrace them.
Embrace them strategically, of course.
Right, not overdo it.
But don't be afraid to use them when you need a moment to think.
Okay, that's a good tip.
Okay, so another technique that the video talks about is shadowing.
Shadowing.
Have you ever heard of that?
I think so, but remind me.
So shadowing is basically listening to a native speaker and then immediately repeating what they say.
Okay, so like an echo.
Exactly. You try to mimic their pronunciation, their intonation, their rhythm, everything.
Oh, wow, that sounds intense.
It can be, but it's incredibly effective for training your brain and your mouth to work together.
Okay.
It's like a workout for your speech production mechanisms.
And what kind of materials can you use for shadowing?
Pretty much anything: podcasts, YouTube videos, audiobooks, even movies.
Okay, so you just choose a short segment, listen carefully.
And then try to repeat it as closely as possible.
Okay, I can see how that would be helpful.
It really helps you internalize the sounds and the patterns of English.
And it forces you to pay attention to the details.
Exactly. And the more you practice, the faster and more accurate you'll become.
I like that.
And here's a really important point that the video makes.
Yeah.
Don't aim for perfection.
No, that's a good one.
It is, because perfection is the enemy of progress.
It's so true.
When you're too focused on getting everything perfect, you actually hinder your fluency.
Because you're constantly second-guessing yourself.
Exactly, and you're afraid to make mistakes.
Right. But mistakes are a natural part of language learning.
They are. It's how we learn.
So instead of trying to avoid mistakes, embrace them.
Okay.
View them as opportunities to learn and grow.
So it's okay to make a grammatical error or mispronounce a word.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As long as your message is clear.
Right.
And if you can't think of the exact word, try explaining it in a different way.
Oh, yeah, that's a good strategy.
It shows resourcefulness and it keeps the conversation going.
So, for example, if I can't remember the word for refrigerator, I could say the thing that keeps food cold.
Exactly. Perfect.
Okay, so to recap the techniques we've covered so far, think in English, use filler words, practice shadowing, and don't aim for perfection.
That's a great summary.
Okay, so we've talked about the reasons for pausing and some techniques to reduce it.
Yes.
Now let's move on to training our brains.
Yes, let's talk about how to actually think faster in English.
Awesome.
So the first point the video makes is that having a good bank of words and phrases is crucial.
Okay, that makes sense. It does the more linguistic building blocks you have at your disposal, the less you have to search for them in real time.
Right, so it's like having a well-stocked toolbox.
Exactly. You have the tools you need to get the job done.
And the video also emphasizes the importance of learning phrases rather than just individual words.
Yes, because native speakers don't speak in isolated words.
Right.
They use chunks of language prefabricated units that flow together naturally.
Okay, can you give an example?
Sure, so instead of just learning the word opinion, learn the phrase, in my opinion.
Okay.
That way, when you want to express your viewpoint, you have the whole phrase ready to go.
And it just comes out more smoothly.
Exactly. It reduces cognitive load and speeds up your speech.
I like that.
Okay, so another important aspect of brain training is active listening.
Okay.
So when you're listening to English, whether it's a podcast, a movie, or a conversation, don't just passively absorb the sounds.
Okay.
Really pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
Try to anticipate what the speaker is going to say next.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's like a mental workout.
Okay.
It forces your brain to process the language more quickly and to make predictions.
And I guess that helps you to be more prepared for when it's your turn to speak.
Exactly. You're already one step ahead.
Okay, I like that.
And building on that idea, there's an exercise called conversation anticipation.
Okay, tell me more.
So it's similar to active listening, but you take it a step further.
Okay.
When you're listening to someone speak, try to guess the very next word or phrase they're going to use.
Oh, wow. So it's like a game.
It's a fun way to challenge yourself and to improve your ability to anticipate language patterns.
And I guess the more you do it, the better you become at predicting what people will say.
Exactly. You start to recognize those common collocations and grammatical structures.
Okay, definitely going to try that one.
Okay, so one last brain training technique I want to mention
Yeah.
is imitation.
Imitation.
Yes. So choose a native English speaker that you admire, maybe from a TV show, a movie, or a podcast, and listen carefully to how they speak. Pay attention to their pronunciation, their rhythm, their intonation, everything.
Okay.
And then try to imitate them.
Oh, so actually try to sound like them.
Exactly. It's like acting.
Okay.
You're putting yourself in their shoes and trying to embody their way of speaking.
And that helps you to internalize the nuances of English pronunciation.
It does. It's a powerful way to rewire your brain and to develop a more natural and fluent speaking style.
Okay, so to recap these brain training methods, learn phrases, practice active listening, try conversation anticipation, and imitate native speakers.
Yes. Those are the key takeaways.
Fantastic.
Okay, so we've covered why we pause, we've talked about some techniques to reduce it, and we've looked at brain training.
Yeah.
Now let's move on to some practical exercises that you can actually do to improve your fluency.
Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty.
Okay, so the first exercise the video recommends is the 1-minute speaking challenge.
Okay, what is that?
It's pretty simple. Choose a topic, any topic,
Okay.
and speak about it for 1 full minute without stopping.
Oh, wow, that sounds tough.
It can be challenging, but that's the point.
Okay.
It forces you to keep talking even when you're not sure what to say next.
So it's like a fluency workout.
Exactly, and the more you do it, the easier it becomes.
Okay, what kind of topics should I choose?
Anything that interests you, really.
Yeah.
It could be your hobbies, your favorite food, a recent trip you took, anything.
And if a full minute feels too long?
Start with 30 seconds and gradually increase the time.
Okay, good to know.
Okay, so another great exercise is story retelling.
Okay, with that.
So listen to a short story or a podcast episode or even a scene from a movie, and then try to retell it in your own words.
Oh, that's a good one.
It helps you to practice your listening comprehension, your vocabulary, and your fluency all at the same time.
And I guess it's also a good way to remember new vocabulary.
Definitely because you're actively using the words and phrases you've learned.
Okay, I'm adding that to my list.
Okay, so another fun exercise is speed conversation practice. Conversation practice.
Speed conversation.
Yes, so you set a timer for 2 minutes, and you try to have a conversation with a language partner as quickly as possible.
Oh, wow. So it's like a race.
Kind of. It's about pushing yourself to think and speak quickly without overthinking.
And I guess it also helps with those awkward pauses.
Absolutely, because you don't have time to hesitate.
Okay, I like that.
And if you don't have a language partner,
Yeah.
you can do this exercise by yourself.
Oh.
Just talk to yourself in the mirror.
Okay.
It might feel a little strange at first,
Yeah.
but it's a great way to practice and to get comfortable with speaking out loud.
Okay, good to know.
Okay, and one last exercise I want to mention is using speech to text apps.
Oh, that's a good one.
It is so you can simply speak into your phone or computer
Yeah.
and then see how much of your speech is transcribed correctly.
Okay.
It's a great way to get feedback on your pronunciation and your fluency.
And I guess it also helps you to identify any words or sounds that you're struggling with.
Exactly.
Right.
You can see where you're making mistakes and then work on improving those areas.
Okay, so to recap these practical exercises, we have the 1-minute speaking challenge, story retelling, speed conversation, and using speech to text apps.
You got it. Those are some great tools for improving your fluency.
Awesome.
Okay, so we've talked about the reasons for pausing techniques to reduce brain training and practical exercises.
Yes, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have. And now we're going to talk about something really important, mindset.
Okay.
Because your mindset plays a huge role in your speaking fluency.
Okay.
So the first mindset shift we need to make is to accept that mistakes are okay.
We talked about that a little bit earlier.
We did, and it's worth repeating because so many learners are afraid of making mistakes.
It's true.
They think it means they're not good at English,
Right.
but the truth is that mistakes are a natural part of the learning process.
They are. Everyone makes mistakes.
Even native speakers make mistakes.
So we need to stop beating ourselves up over it.
Exactly. Instead of viewing mistakes as failures, view them as opportunities to learn.
Okay, that's a good way to look at it.
It is every mistake you make is a chance to improve.
And I guess the more mistakes you make, the more you learn.
Precisely so. Don't be afraid to experiment with the language.
Right.
Make mistakes and learn from them.
Okay, I like that.
Okay, so another important mindset shift is to focus on communication rather than perfection.
Okay.
So many learners get caught up in trying to speak perfect English.
Yeah, they want to sound like a textbook.
But the goal of speaking isn't to be perfect.
Right.
It's to communicate.
To be understood.
Exactly. So if you can get your message across clearly and effectively, that's a success.
Even if you make a few grammatical errors.
Even if you make a few mistakes.
Okay, so don't sweat the small stuff.
Don't sweat the small stuff.
Okay.
And finally, the video emphasizes the importance of speaking with confidence.
Oh, yeah. Confidence is key.
It is, because when you speak with confidence, people are more likely to listen to you and to understand you.
And it also makes you feel more comfortable and relaxed.
Exactly. It's a positive feedback loop. So even if you're not 100% sure of yourself, try to project an air of confidence.
Fake it till you make it.
Exactly. And you know what? The more you do it, the more confident you'll become.
It's true.
So stand up straight, make eye contact, and speak with energy.
Good advice.
And remember, everyone feels nervous sometimes.
Even native speakers.
Even native speakers, so don't let it hold you back.
Okay, so to recap these mindset shifts, accept that mistakes are okay, focus on communication, and speak with confidence.
Those are the keys to unlocking your fluency.
Awesome.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have. This has been a really insightful deep dive.
It has. We've explored the reasons why we pause in English. We've looked at techniques to reduce those pauses.
Yep.
We've talked about brain training, practical exercises, and the importance of mindset.
And now it's time for our listeners to take action.
Yes, it's time to put all of this knowledge into practice.
So here's your challenge, listeners.
Choose one technique or exercise that resonated with you today and commit to practicing it this week.
Even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
Exactly. Consistency is key.
And as you start practicing,
Think about what your biggest challenge is when it comes to speaking English.
yeah,
Is it finding the right words? Is it overcoming nervousness? Is it something else?
and then focus your practice on that specific area.
That way you'll see the most progress.
Makes sense.
And finally, as you continue on your English language journey,
Hmm.
here's a thought to leave you with.
Okay, I'm listening.
How can you integrate the habit of thinking in English into your daily life, even when you're not actively speaking?
Oh, that's a good one.
It is, because the more you think in English, the easier it will become to speak fluently.
So it's about making English a part of your everyday life.
Exactly. And you know what? It can be really fun.
You can.
So challenge yourself to think in English as much as possible
I love that.
and watch your fluency soar.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive,
It's been a pleasure.
and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.